listening to The Watchers, a show where two women from opposite ends of New Jersey watch movies about the fact that I don't think they allow dancing in Music Town.
They definitely don't allow dancing in Music Town.
I'm
Or
Andrea.
tattoos or piercings.
No revealing clothing.
Nope. We're here. It's happening.
It's happening.
Last week, it was mine. And this is your significant movie.
It is. And it's one that I never thought we'd even get to do because we didn't realize until you were about, halfway through this movie?
No, I realized it about 10 minutes in. I remember saying last week, I only saw this movie once, and it was over 10 years ago. I was wrong. I did not see this movie. I worked in a video store in 1995, and I saw the preview for this movie about 1,000 times.
I'll bet, yeah.
And because I was working in a video store called Empire Video, I might add, I apparently never watched this movie.
That's so funny.
So we accidentally stuck to our plan.
I'm so happy about that. That makes me so happy. I will say the first thing that I learned on watching this movie and doing the little bit of research that I did because I thought I knew everything is this movie was a total flop.
Oh, huge bomb.
Because I was 9 or 10 when this movie came out. So I had no idea. And this movie was huge for me and my friends.
Because it got to the way that it got to its cult status, which is like the after the fact VHS swapping, video renting, like that's how it really reached people. This is a movie I didn't see in theaters, but it is a movie I saw like pretty much as soon as it was out to rent because I think I've said before, we were at the video store like several times a week. So I saw everything. Yeah. It's a movie nobody saw in theaters.
It
made like no money.
It released to 87 theaters nationwide. I had no idea. And
that was not the original plan.
Yeah, no.
Like it got pulled way, way, way back, like at the last minute.
Because mostly because of Clueless and one bad test screening.
Yeah. It's really wild. It was like it was a complete flop.
And you know, I was reading reviews. We'll get into this and we'll do our thing. And I was reading reviews of it, and I sort of get the issue, except I just don't think this movie was trying to do what people were faulting it for not doing.
That's interesting. Because, I mean, well, I don't know if we should talk about this right off the bat. We should probably start the way we usually start. But I found a really sort of insightful quote about why it didn't
I wonder if it's the same one
it probably
I found. There's a fantastic BuzzFeed article, which is not something I say very often about BuzzFeed articles.
That's where I got it.
Yeah, I'll obviously drop it in the show notes. We're probably both going to quote from this a lot because it's great. But it's by Anne Helen Peterson.
Yeah, who I also really love her. She has a podcast called Work Appropriate on the Crooked Network that's about like work culture.
Cool.
The quote that I'm referring to says, when Empire Records began filming in 1994, Kurt Cobain had just committed suicide, Marc Jacobs had put grunge on the high fashion runway, and the major record labels were throwing money at anything that might be the next Nirvana or Pearl Jam. Empire Records, like Reality Bites before it, was the product of a major studio attempting to reach a subculture notoriously resistant to direct address. This makes so much sense to me. Like, I actually think I probably enjoyed this movie more now than I would have at the time. Because at the time, it would have felt like it was trying too hard to do something that I had already been looking at for years in other movies and felt like it was past that time. Right.
I guess to me, I just feel like it isn't, and I mean this as a compliment for this movie. I think maybe listeners are learning that I may be coming across on this show as a little frivolous because
Definitely not.
And I'm okay. But if I am, I'm okay with that because what I'm about to say is that, like, I just don't think this movie really was. I mean, there's obviously the damn the man, save the empire, that whole thing, but it's Mark the Stoner who's, you know, ate a whole tray of weed brownies who has that idea, and it's a very small story.
Yeah,
I just don't know how much of a message this movie is trying to have.
I don't think you're wrong about that.
And I think that's okay. I think this movie always feels good to watch for me for that reason.
Yeah.
Because like I don't have to, Pump Up the Volume, which I liked a whole lot. I still have to, I guess you sort of also with Empire Records have to deal with things like suicide to an extent. Though even Deb says like that's not really.
It's a very different sort of valence on it. Like the vibes in this movie are not the vibes in Pump Up the Volume at all.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it was marketed as like a Gen X movie. Like maybe the problem was actually in the PR and the marketing and not and the expectations that created. As opposed to that it was trying to do something that it didn't do. Because I think you're right. I don't think it was trying to do that.
Right. I kind of think this is a movie about a group of teenagers on the like precipice of adulthood and what it's like spending a day at the record store they all work at. Like, I mean, I kind of think that's what this movie is, and it does a great job of that.
Yeah, and not to simplify it, but it is a little bit Breakfast Club at a record store.
Totally.
Which is not a bad thing. That's not an insult at all.
Right.
Like, I loved the Breakfast Club before I realized how rapey it was in certain places. But should we summarize, or should I summarize this movie for you?
Yeah. What's Empire Records about, Jodie?
Oh, gosh. Okay. Let's see how I do. I didn't write anything down again. Empire Records.
It's a very complicated plot.
Yeah, right. Empire Records is about a group of misfit teens that work at an independent record store for their sort of disgruntled drummer boss, Joe. Who is the manager, not the owner, as we find out. The store is about to be sold to a evil corporation called Music Town, which really reminded me of like Sam Goody. I know a lot of people associate it with Tower Records, but we'll talk about that later.
Well, yeah,
and so in the process of one day, we find out that Lucas, who has finally been trusted to close the store the night before, sees the paperwork, finds out that they're about to be sold, decides to take the $9,000 that this place somehow earned in a day, and I'm sorry, I worked at a video store.
Maybe it's a weekly thing.
Yeah, maybe. And go to Atlantic City and gamble to try to save the store, quote unquote, by making money back. Of course, he loses the money, and we go throughout the day. We meet other various characters at the store. Lucas somehow is not fired or murdered or sent to jail. And then later in the day, there's Rex Manning, this like weird Robert Palmer, Rod Stewart-esque star. So there's like a subplot about him and one of our main characters wanting to lose her virginity to him, which I find horrible. And eventually the day is saved by the lovable Mark, who decides they should put on an event, concert, party, and charge money to raise the money to buy the store back from Mitchell, who is the original owner. How did I do? I know there's more than that, but that's sort of like the broad strokes.
Yeah, I think you crushed it.
I don't know if I'd say that, but yeah, and we have our different like main characters who we can talk about. Gina, who is Renee Zellweger, looking very Chasing Amy in this movie.
Yeah, totally.
Like full Chasing Amy vibes. Liv Tyler as Corey, the like overachiever Paige from Pump Up the Volume type. Mark, lovable stoner.
With a C or with a K?
Yeah. Who else?
AJ.
Lucas, obviously.
Lucas.
The sort of dark, sardonic idiot who gambles away the money. AJ, the lovesick, quote unquote nice guy. It's definitely his vibes.
Yeah, everybody has one characteristic for the most part. And this is a movie I will be completely uncritical of. I'm sorry. But no. I think that's fine.
I was completely uncritical last week. I get it. And then there's other various characters. There's Warren Beatty. I know, it's great. the younger kid who is shoplifting and gets caught. Rap metal, Whitney Houston. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And
It's
later
for his
comes
girlfriend,
back
okay?
with a gun, which was wild. Yeah. And it ends up with the two sort of quote unquote leads, AJ and Corey, falling in love on the roof of the building. Which the way she like swoons, she like kind of like she's just very charming in this movie. I'm not like this is strange because I'm kind of indifferent to Liv Tyler, despite the fact that I do love her in this movie, and she's in That Thing You Do that same year or a year later. Yeah,
and she is unbearably lovable in that movie.
Yeah,
it
agreed.
is so hard not to fall in love with her.
Yeah.
I feel a little bit that way about her in this movie because I'm in love with everybody in this movie.
Yeah.
But it's That Thing You Do is like she's perfect in that movie.
I did not like her nearly as much in this movie as I did in That Thing You Do, and I think it was like the sort of 90s slut shamey stuff she was doing was just like, no thank you.
Yeah.
There was another quote from that same BuzzFeed article that Alan Moyle, our director that we're kind of covering, said even after Tyler was cast and arrived on set, it was unclear if she could act or was just being herself. And like apparently everyone on set was in love with her.
That's so interesting because I think she is really good in this movie. Like the scene when after she throws herself at Rex and she goes running up to the roof, and of course, because AJ has decided by 1:37 exactly, Joe, he's going to tell Corey he loves her.
Yeah.
It's the worst moment. He does not realize that she's already crying and upset.
He's not reading the situation.
Even a little bit because AJ's an idiot.
Yes. All of the men in this movie are idiots.
Yeah. And she's really good in that scene where she's like, she really can't believe it. And she's like, so done. And I think she's great in that scene, but it is interesting to think like how many choices she's actually making there. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't think that she's like a bad actor, but I do think she seems to have a track that she can stay on and be believable in. And I don't know. I've never seen her in anything that stretches her too much beyond that. So
she's always somebody who feels like she's just about to burst into tears. And she's good at it. That's the other thing is, again, this is another movie where I thought old people were playing young people. And for some of them, that's true. Yeah. Coyote Shivers, which this is like, not news to me, but he was like almost 30 and lied about his age.
He was also even weirder.
He was at the time Liv's stepfather. But she's only 18, I think, when they're filming this.
He was married to Liv Tyler's mother.
His mom. He's a fucking scumbag. I don't know if you know anything about
I
Coyote
found
Shivers.
that out too.
Oh yeah, he is a
scumbag.
Yeah, he is.
Which bummed me out.
One good thing about him.
No,
like nothing.
That bummed me out really bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Liv Tyler, for me, my main association with her, other than That Thing You Do, was the Aerosmith videos.
right.
With Alicia Silverstone? Yeah.
That's right.
I don't know why I blanked on her last name. Yeah, I literally, early on in my notes, I said, because I had to Google this, Liv Tyler is only a year and a half younger than me, and then I wrote, thank God. Because those videos were important.
Yeah, formative.
In certain ways. Yeah. And for some reason in my brain, I was like, am I being creepy about this? But I was like, no, we're about the same age. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I think I've been in love with her and Alicia Silverstone for...
Oh, yeah. Especially the crazy video where they're clearly like a couple.
Yeah. Again, I want to be clear. I don't know why, but Liv Tyler in these early movies, she's just not somebody who's like, I'm like not a Lord of the Rings person. I know she's in the
she was like an elf.
Armageddon, obviously.
Yeah.
I know she's worked a ton.
She has. Yeah.
She's just not somebody whose career I've like.
I don't think she's done a lot lately. I could be wrong about that.
I guess we could find out.
We could.
If
only there was a thing where we could figure that out. Ethan Embry is in this movie, who is adorable.
I love him. Again,
I believe it.
Well, and he goes right from this also to That Thing You Do, where he is even more of a like sweet doofus. He's
and
just,
apparently was still wildly in love with Liv Tyler.
which is very cute.
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah, she's on that 911 Lone Star show.
Oh, I feel like a lot of these people ended up on those sort of serialized cop things.
Yeah. She did more TV acting. She's done more TV acting than I knew.
Rory, the guy who played Lucas, was on CSI Miami for a long time.
Okay. Again, Dazed and Confused, and then this movie, two movies I loved as a kid. I think he's really charming in this movie.
Yeah, I found some fun info when I was researching this as well. Like the original screenplay didn't include any of the like anti-corporate stuff at all. Mm-hmm. It wasn't about like a corporate takeover. It was like more about the individual characters, which I thought was interesting.
Well, and it's funny because you said earlier people associate Music Town more with Tower Records.
Yeah.
But the screenwriter worked at Tower Records. Yep. This, in her head, that's what this place is based on.
Yeah. So. And when she was interviewed and somebody brought it up that other people think of Music Town as the Tower Records, she was like shocked.
Uh-huh.
Which seems a little
like
naive. But
right.
Yeah, the screenwriter is Carol Heikkinen. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have a picture of Tower Records on in the Village behind me because I spent a lot of time in Tower Records when I lived in the city.
Oh, yeah.
So like the little like listening booths and all of that, I used to spend a lot of time just like listening to music before I bought it, and you know, I really loved it.
Yeah, we had a tower on South Street in Philly forever.
Yeah,
but then also like, yeah, I mean, it's funny because South Street had Tower, but then it still has Repo Records, which has been around forever, and there are like a lot of bands that I got my first like CD just from like picking up headphones that were plugged in, you know, to one of the little listening stations there.
Yep.
And so,
yeah, exactly.
Always the dream to work at a record store. I never did it, but I did work at a video store, which felt like the next best thing. I do think the thing about this movie, one of the things about this movie though, is that like, I worked at a video store, but I also worked at a movie theater, and ours was like it was a pretty small theater. It was one where at the time, this isn't true now, but it was a Southern chain that had one, for some reason, theater in Jersey. And so we had no corporate oversight, like at all. We had one, our like manager when I worked there was 30, which now I know is still basically a kid. And district, we didn't have district, and like once a year or something like that, the like corporate team would come up. But for the most part, it was just like, it was a free for all, and I loved it. And it was like my whole life for a few years. And I think that's what I connect to now.
That
like
was
thinking
your
about
Empire
this
Records.
Movie. Yeah, totally.
I feel like for me, like I said, I worked at a video store called Empire Video, but we've talked about this in the past. My bosses kind of sucked, and like I was friends with the people I worked with, but it wasn't like a fun job. For me, the job I had, and I don't know, I wonder what it's like for kids growing up now, if they still have these sort of like jobs that are just populated by teens. Like I'm sure they do, like ice cream stands and things like, you know, in the summers it's all college people going away to college. But like, you know, when I was growing up, I worked in a bagel shop for 2 years, and everyone I worked with was a friend of mine. We were all 16-year-old girls, like, and our bosses turned out later, one of them was a little bit creepy, but hence the all 16-year-old girls part. But we had so much fun, even though we worked our asses off. We got there at like 5:45 in the morning. But like after we got out of work, like we would all hang out. We would go play pool. We would go hang out in the park. We would go have bagel fights, like with the leftover bagels. I would just like
come up to the theater and hang out, like when on my off days. Like we would all.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, we would close the theater and then all just drive to the diner up the road.
Yeah.
Like, I spent so much time with my life wrapped up with that little place that, like, and I think is, to me, that feels like a universal, if you're a person who
think so.
worked
Yeah.
as a teenager.
It's probably
you
like an
know?
economic class thing. Like if you're
Right,
from
that's true too.
from an economic class or with parents that insisted on it, where you had to work as a teenager in order to like put gas in your shitty car or whatever, or,
Right.
you know, pay for the bus if you didn't have a car.
Mm-hmm.
Like you probably had, because my very first job was at a supermarket and I definitely had a crush on the guy in produce. But after that, I worked at the bagel store for 2 years. And so we were all friends. Like when I would sneak out in the middle of the night and I would walk into town with my friends, we would knock on the door or the window of the bagel shop. And one of the bakers, Eddie, would like open the door and give us bagels and be like, go home, guys. What are you doing? It's 2 a.m. Your parents don't know you're doing this. Like, because he was like an older Greek guy.
Right, yeah.
And he would just like give us bagels and admonish us to not stay out.
I love that.
You know, and so it was sort of like a little hub for us.
Mm-hmm.
So I do get that sort of like, we all grew up together. We all graduated high school around the same time. And like, we all went away to college around the same time. And so I do relate to that feeling of that job that becomes more than just a job, like because of the people that are there.
And I think that feels very real in this movie. Like there are certain scenes when I was watching where I was like, I think they do a good job of making it feel like these are people who have all worked together, probably like for 2 years, right? Since they were old enough to get the job, basically. And like when you don't get a ton of backstory on why Deb is the way she is, you figure out it's got some stuff to do with her mom, and she's just generally like, but there's not like
her mom's not there apparently.
Yeah, but there's not like a huge scene like that. You get the scene with Deb's like fake funeral, her living funeral that they have, where you do get a little bit of backstory on most of them. You get that weird, I've always thought that was strange, that Joe is Lucas's adopted father.
Yeah. It
which
was
is
the only
strange.
Extremely strange. Also the only thing that explains why he didn't call the cops.
Well, I think that's why
that's why it had to be there, because otherwise I could not take that logical leap.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care how cool your boss is. If you steal $9,000, they're calling the cops. Like, so.
Although maybe this isn't me being whatever. I think if I were Joe, I probably wouldn't. I couldn't imagine sending somebody at that age to, because like Lucas is, he's probably 18 or he's probably 18 or 19. Like he would go to jail. That's a lot of money.
That's true.
So I don't know. I wouldn't be letting him hang out in the store though. Yeah.
Well, and also apparently, and this I got from that same article, you probably read this too, like the story came from this like legend of a Tower Records employee who took the count out money at the end of the night but then showed up the next day, which to me is like, what the fuck? So the manager apparently didn't press charges and the employee didn't even get fired. So like comes from somewhere.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Just like all that retail stuff, really, I have visceral memories from all of my years working in retail. Like I worked in retail on and off until my mid-30s, and like the cash registers, the drawers, the cashing out, the counting, the like, all of that stuff was just like, ugh. I just like, when you've done it for long enough, it lives in you. Like I could get, you could put me in front of a cash register right now and I could start ringing people out so fast. Like
totally.
Like I would just, I'm unfortunately good at it after all these years. So
it's also why I'm so annoying to go to a clothing store with, because I'm going to be straightening racks. Like I can't, I'm so sorry.
I did this at a bookstore last weekend.
I can't help it.
So this is not really a thing, but the fashion in this movie is so 1995. Like like I said last week, I was 19 in 1995. I still love and will probably always love the giant pants, small tank top look. Like that's just,
and it's back around.
It is
back.
It's
a good look.
It's a good look. It's a good look. That part didn't feel dated to me. A lot of other things did. The haircuts,
also,
the makeup,
the
men's clothing, the fact that all of their shirts were way too big.
So big.
Yeah.
AJ is falling out of that shirt.
Oh my god, they're all falling out of the coats and the shirts and the pants,
except for Lucas, who's got that cool beatnik look for some reason.
Yeah,
which is...
he looked like he just came out of So I Married an Axe Murderer.
Exactly.
Which the Debbie Mazar, who plays Jane, was in.
Me, Joe, you, Jane. That's right. Mm-hmm. And it's very 95 in a way that feels like actually 95. Like Clueless, we all celebrate for the fashion in that movie.
Yeah.
And it is incredible, but it's very like amped up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's kind of the point, because they're all rich kids and whatever. They're like trying for it. But like the characters in Empire Records dress like people were actually dressing in 95.
Those little plaid skirts had such a hold on everybody.
With the giant boots.
Oh my god.
And the fucking the furry, that like material mohair sweater.
Yep.
Is like, I haven't seen anything made out of that material since maybe 2001.
Oh, we will
maybe.
again.
It's going to come back around, I'm sure.
Yeah, it will.
But
yeah, I definitely have a photo of myself somewhere dressed very similarly to Liv Tyler in this movie from around the same time.
I believe it.
Yeah. Yeah. The one thing I had a hard time with in this movie was believing that the girls in this movie actually liked Rex Manning. Like, I get it. He's been around for a while. They've liked him their whole life.
The only one who really did was Liv. And I'm sure that she, did, because she grew up probably having a crush on him when he was little, the same way that I did, like, Robbie Sinclair from Dinosaurs, for example.
Andrea.
Just for example. It's probably the same thing.
Sure,
and I'm just saying, if I worked at a record store and Robbie Sinclair,
the dinosaur,
we're on some kind of like comeback tour or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. What am I gonna? I'm bringing Robbie his lunch. You know what I mean? Anyway.
Yeah.
Where was I?
I don't know.
Oh, we were talking about women.
Rex Manning. Yeah, I was so relieved when I realized that nobody else liked him. Like, I was like, this can't be like somebody that we're supposed to think is in any way good or likable.
Yeah, no. And the way, like, Mark just being Mark, he's the only one who's kind of swept up in it, but he's just like an excitable guy.
Yeah.
So he's just excited at the spectacle of it, I think.
Yeah. He'd be excited at pretty much anything.
Exactly. It's like major golden retriever energy.
Oh,
Mark.
yeah. Yeah.
I love him so much.
Again, I think the reason that I enjoyed this so much more now than I think I would have at the time was because now I can look back on that time in my life and the people I was friends with and very much see them in this movie. Mm-hmm. Like, I knew a Mark.
I think I was Mark.
Yeah, I could see that.
I think I definitely was Mark.
Yeah. I don't know if there's anyone in this movie that I was. I think the closest I probably was Gina.
Mm-hmm. Well, and Gina, Gina has one flaw in this movie, and it's that she has sex with Rex Manning.
Yeah.
Like, otherwise, she tries to be nice to Deb. She is a pretty good friend to Liv until that moment. But it's because Corey is such an asshole to her.
Yeah, she really is.
At that scene when they're having lunch together. So it's like, that
slut-shaming scene was not great.
Yeah.
I mean,
no.
It did what it was supposed to do. But, yeah.
She's really good at being a self-righteous asshole. Because Gina even says, Miss Self-Righteous. Mm-hmm. And the way Liv puts her big, broad chin, I mean that as a compliment, puts her big, broad chin in the air. Like, she's so...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I thought it was really funny.
Hey, you forgot your thingy.
I wrote that down.
It's something, don't leave anything near me that you mean to take with you, because I have to say it. I have to.
I believe it. I feel like some of these, if I'd watched it at that time, would definitely have been in my vocabulary. Like, I don't feel the need to explain my art to you, Warren.
I don't feel the need to explain my art to you, Warren. Who glued these quarters down, man?
Yeah.
What the hell for? Yeah.
Yeah.
The whole movie is just like, there is not a day that goes by that I don't think of this movie. It's like, if I catch, like, even just like if I catch 137 on the clock, like it's I have to mention it. Like
That's so funny. The other thing this movie does have going for it is there's some really good montages. Like musical moments where like
yes.
the music picks up and there's like a little bit of, and because it can be, what is the word for it when it's like the music is actually diegetic, thank you, when the music is actually happening in the movie, because of that it feels less cheesy than it would otherwise. Like it's still a little cheesy, but like it's not over the top, it's like fun.
Yeah,
because there's a reason the music would actually be playing.
Exactly. This movie feels like, and it's interesting that this is a case, this movie almost feels like it could be a musical. Like those moments like that. Yeah. And
We're
we
gonna
know
get to that.
Yep.
Every single movie we've done recently, they're making a musical of.
Exactly.
Which is a very weird thing.
The like montage of them getting the store ready.
Yeah.
That's one that feels really relatable if you've worked any sort of retail at all.
Yeah.
Like, how many times have you dusted a store that probably didn't need to be dusting because the people who closed the night before also dusted, but it's on your stupid checklist.
Yeah. No, also like I worked at Starbucks in my like late 20s and early 30s, and closing at the end of the night was when things were able to get a little crazy. Like you would turn the music up really loud because nobody wanted to clean the stupid store. So like we had to like play the music, be silly, be stupid, like throw pastries at each other, you know, just to get through it.
There's also the shoplifter montage is so good.
When Lucas is chasing him.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah. I also really, a lot of these movies are so reminding me of the grip that MTV had on culture. Yes. Because there's such MTV like based movies in a way. Like the reason that Rex Manning is like so famous is because he's a video star. Like he's an MTV star, you know? And like that video that they showed, it's the Robert Palmer video.
It's so stupid.
It's Addicted to Love.
Yeah.
It's bad, but it's like definitely a reference to something really specific. Yeah.
Well, and the fact that Video Killed the Radio Star is one of the first songs you hear in this in this movie. I keep holding off. I keep starting to and then stopping talking about the soundtrack because it's the most important part of this movie. It is everything to me.
I believe that. I actually, one of my very first notes to myself, I think it was like line 3, was I see why Andrea loves the soundtrack. I wrote, first I wrote the thing about Liv Tyler. Then I wrote something about how I was whittling drumsticks this weekend while I was camping. Then I wrote, oh no, the corporation. And then I wrote, I see why Andrea loves the soundtrack. Those were my first 4 notes.
And it's got a few like, I mean, everything is really 90s except for weirdly the use of Dire Straits' Romeo and Juliet, which is a song that I love so much and is also in Can't Hardly Wait, which is another Ethan Embry movie. And it's a weird, I love that song. It's one of my favorites forever. Probably though, because of this movie and Can't Hardly Wait, I'm not sure. But it's also 15 years old by the time they use it in this movie. So it's really weird that this and then 2 years later, Can't Hardly Wait, it shows up in these two. But for the most part, it's a very 90s soundtrack. But it's not, it's like Gin Blossoms, but it's Till I Hear It From You, which is only a hit because of this movie.
Right.
Like they were really thoughtful about the songs. They weren't just pulling the most popular songs of the 90s at the time.
Right.
Which I think is really cool.
No, the soundtrack was awesome. I agree with that. I think that that's sort of like, I mean, that is Alan Moyle's thing, is like killer soundtracks.
Totally. Like, it's like, just to run through some of them.
Yeah.
It's Till I Hear It From You, Gin Blossoms, Liar, Cranberries. Again, Cranberries, but not
what you'd expect. Not Dreams, not,
Exactly. A Girl Like You, Free by the Martinis, which is like the, kind of like the, what's the word? It's like the song for this movie. Crazy Life by Toad the Wet Sprocket, Circle of Friends, Better Than Ezra, I Don't Want to Live Today by Ape Hangers, which I love that song, but I don't think that song does anything outside of this movie, right?
Right.
Ready, Steady, Go by the Mises, a name I had no idea that was. I just know that song from this movie. But then some Evan Dando, like it's perfect.
It's
Can't
also,
Stop Losing Myself, like
and other than the Romeo and Juliet, like, it is very of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's of the time, but it's not the expected songs, like you said.
Yeah.
And I think that that's similar to what he does in Pump Up the Volume, in that there's like a Beastie Boys song in it, but it's not what you'd expect. Like, you know, it's kind of his thing.
Yeah.
And I loved the mosh pit in the store. That was
so funny.
Really fun.
Yeah. Well, it makes the customers all crazy, like. Oh yeah, Counting Blue Cars is in this. There's also, while we're talking about the music, there's that scene with Guar.
I was like, that made me laugh really hard.
It's so fucking funny and weird.
Yeah, it is. It's apparently happened really at a show.
Yeah,
like they
it
went
also
to
wasn't
a
part
show.
of the. Yeah, it's not part of the movie. It was Ethan Embry's idea.
Yeah,
he saw a flyer and was like, again, I think this is from that BuzzFeed article, right?
Yep.
And was like, we should do this.
Yeah, it's so funny. I wrote, ha 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 ha, Guar. Is he high? Yeah, he's high.
I love you, Eddie.
Oh yeah, that I like that little aside. That little moment.
It's funny, this is a PG-13 movie, and apparently that was by the studios or the producers or whatever's design, that the movie was originally supposed to have an R rating. It is funny that some of the things that were lost, I was reading, were Eddie's explicit selling of weed. Like, apparently he was like running an operation on the roof and stuff.
Yep.
But you know what else has a PG-13 rating? Is Hiding Out, which is just full of gun murder.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah. No, it's weird. Apparently there is a director's cut of this movie that has an extra 17 minutes, which
I've never watched it.
I didn't want to pay for it, or I would have.
Well, I think a lot of the deleted scenes are on YouTube, and I thought about watching them before you and I sat down to talk about it, and I couldn't. I wanted
to have the pure experience, because I knew that like what you have loved your whole life is the original movie, and so I didn't want to mess with it.
And I've never.
Also, I didn't want to pay like $11.
So I might after we're done here.
Yeah.
But it's just I feel it feels really strange to me that there's like some, and it's all stuff. Probably, I would bet I would be glad to know it existed, because it's all Alan Moyle. It's stuff that he wanted in, and that the what's the screenwriter's name?
Oh yeah,
I have it right in front of me.
I do too. Carol Heikkinen.
Yeah, it's all stuff that Carol Heikkinen, intended to be in it. So it's not the opposite thing where sometimes, like, for example, there's the Atlantic City scene is apparently the studio asked them to add that. It's the opposite of that, because, like, you know what I mean? So it's stuff that I probably would like to know, but I feel weird about it. I don't know.
No, I get that. I feel like there's probably, because there were a few moments where I was like, what? Like, I felt like something was missed, where like at first I wrote down like, does Eddie actually work there? Who's Eddie? And I think that there was a scene actually that kind of contextualized him a little bit more that didn't end up in the final cut.
I was looking for some location stuff, and I found an article that had a list of a bunch of different locations, and it's mentioning scenes that are not in the movie at all. It's like, this is the restaurant where Joe and Lucas have lunch, and here's Joe's apartment where they have the after hours party. And I was like, I don't want to see them in an after hours party at Joe's house.
Yeah, that's
like,
not canon.
That's so weird. Does Lucas live there with him?
Yeah, who knows? Yeah.
So I felt real weird even just reading that stuff. I don't know.
I also think it's interesting, the original version of like the screenplay, Liv Tyler's character had no interest in sleeping with Rex Manning.
Yeah.
She didn't. It wasn't about her losing her virginity to him. She says, I never wrote a draft where Corey wanted to lose her virginity to Rex Manning.
And that's her whole thing in this movie.
And that she's like perfect. And that she's a speed freak. Right.
Because her character is that stereotype that you talked about, like the one we saw last week in Pump Up the Volume, Paige.
Oh, she's definitely Paige in a lot of ways.
But the thing that then is supposed to complicate her, I guess, is that she does want to sleep with Rex Manning and then doesn't, because he's fucking gross about
Disgusting.
it, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's like, So if we do take that out, her character is her only thing she has going on is not realizing that she's in love with AJ until
But in some ways, I kind of like that better, to be honest. I feel like it's simpler. Like, it becomes more about the fact that she's a perfectionist. She has to, like, have this great version of herself, but she is, like, taking speed or whatever in order to, like, study really hard. And that she just doesn't know her best friend's in love with her. Like, I found the whole thing with Rex Manning and her felt off to me. But in a way that I know is because it was the first time I'd ever watched it and not, like, you know, that it might not seem off to someone who's watched that movie forever.
No, I think you're right. I do. I think that it is.
I think they were like, Liv Tyler's really hot, and we want to, you know.
We want her to take her shirt off.
She was in a bra in that video. Let's see if we can do that again.
Yeah, I think so.
To watch.
Because Rex does need to be an asshole, and he does need. And, like, Joe standing up and kicking him out of the store is a really, like, nice moment for the crew. The way they all, like, you know, say something shitty to him. And we all hate the new album. Like, that whole part is really satisfying. But you can find other reasons to do that don't require poor Liv Tyler throwing herself at that gross man.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm glad at least she didn't actually sleep with him in the movie. But, like, yeah. I don't know that we need that part.
Yeah.
Roger Ebert, when he reviewed this movie, which he did not like it, but he did compare it to Pump Up the Volume. He compared Lucas to Mark in Pump Up the Volume in his like disaffected sort of
that's so
dry.
Funny because I don't get the impression that Lucas. It's interesting that we don't see Lucas before this changeover. Really, we get a few seconds of him, but he's like quoting the Doors at the beginning. So he is this weird, like, you know, the Chinese guy from the Karate Kid. AJ calls him at one point. But he says, like, yesterday you were regular Lucas and today you're like the Chinese guy from the Karate Kid. Yeah. So there's a version of Lucas that is different.
Right.
And Mark is not. Like, Mark is that kind of interested and, like, introspective kind of person that it seems like Lucas wasn't until he had a hard night in New Jersey.
I will say also, we've all been there. I mean, I'll also say that Roger Ebert referred to the party at the end as a rave. So maybe he's just a little out of touch with the culture.
Out of touch. Is that a rave?
It's definitely not a rave.
Not a rave.
I can say that is not a rave.
I do love that party, though.
Oh, it's so fun. It's so fun.
Really,
did you
old
see
ladies in the curlers sharing
the curlers?
A beer?
Yeah, it was great. Did you see the sort of like the casting that never happened?
Oh, yeah.
There's a couple of them.
Yeah.
There's the main one. The person that didn't end up in it.
So I knew that because he's credited in the movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if he still is, like, if, like, I didn't watch the credits. Like, I wasn't reading the credits when I was watching it today. Yeah. So I don't know if that's been updated, but, like, on the VHS, it says Tobey Maguire as Andre. Yeah. It's so funny the way that my instinct for everything is to do a deep dive the second I'm interested is to hyper focus and, like, learn every single thing about the thing. Not Empire Records. Like I didn't know this. All I have always known is that Tobey Maguire was supposed to be in this movie, and I thought he was totally cut from it for some post-production reason. Right. But that's not the case at all.
The story's funnier than that.
Do you want to?
No, you do it.
So he was there on location. And apparently too, what I thought was really sweet is the way everybody talks about filming this movie.
Oh,
and it is often the case for a lot of this is such a specific thing for the time. Mm-hmm. A lot of shows and movies were filmed in North Carolina. There's a soundstage down there. And it's just like one of those places, like Dawson's Creek and One Tree Hill, both famously shot in North Carolina.
One Tree Hill.
One Tree Hill was not my show, but I think we've talked about how important Dawson's
Creek. Oh, yes. We have talked about it.
I've done the pilgrimage. Like, I've been to some of the filming locations for Dawson's Creek.
Wow.
And I ate at the restaurant that was the set for Dawson's dad's restaurant. Like, it's...
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So North Carolina, where they went. But because of that, it's really isolated. It's not LA. It's not New York.
Right.
So when... people in these shows and these movies, especially when they're young like this, just end up bonding.
Yeah.
And so there are very sweet stories that I was reading about this week of how close all of these people became. And one of the stories about this time, because they were all like hanging out at Alan Moyle's house where he was having nightly dinners.
Instead of putting them in hotels, he like rented a bunch of apartments that were all next to each other on the beach. And so it was like they weren't as separate as they would have been otherwise. They were all basically living together.
Mm-hmm. Which I think is really sweet. And Tobey Maguire was one of the people who was cast and was living there. And apparently he took a bunch of mushrooms one night.
They don't think they specified mushrooms, but they
psychedelics.
Yeah, they said where is it? He may or may not have consumed a psychotropic drug and somehow ended up in the basement of Moyle's beach house eating a giant bowl of cereal.
A giant bowl of cereal. It's such
great detail.
Just perfect detail.
Yeah.
And had like a kind of like existential crisis and was sort of like, this is not where I need to be. I need to go home. And then I read another article that said and I haven't checked the timeline on this, but that he checked himself into rehab for alcoholism shortly after that. So maybe there's like, some less fanciful stuff going on there as well. But apparently what sparked it was
the bowl of cereal.
The bowl of I get the impression that the cereal was speaking to him, like,
sure.
It's
Absolutely.
Fruit Loops in my head and all the little O's are talking to him.
Yeah.
You play a mean guitar, Mark. It's like one of those.
Yeah. Definitely. Another casting one that I read that I thought was really interesting was Billie Joe Armstrong from Green Day was originally going to be the Coyote Shivers part.
Jodie, when I read that, my stomach dropped. I'm mourning a reality that I never got to experience.
I know.
Have we talked about Green Day on this show?
We've talked a little bit about Green Day. We've talked about how I came to Green Day through Bad Religion and therefore was a little bit cooler than you were. But that...
Oh, good. I'm glad we talked about that. Good.
We talked about that part. But I also love Green Day. I mean, like, for me, they were a little bit later, a little bit poppier, a little bit more just of the time that they came out.
Green Day is to music as Empire Records is to movies for me.
I can see that.
It's
Absolutely.
My first tattoo was a Green Day tattoo. I talked my mom into letting me get when I was 14 years old.
Oh my God.
And my 14th birthday, I got that tattoo.
Wow.
Green Day was my favorite band from second grade until Fall Out Boy became my favorite band, like sophomore year of high school. So like, I know our audience is really intimidated by how cool I am now that they are hearing that.
For sure.
Not quite as cool as you because, Bad Religion first and then Green Day. So you're a little cooler.
Yeah.
But
that's all right,
but I just mean like, I would not,
I still listen to Green Day.
Yeah.
Like it's still good.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Green Day was already everything to me when this movie came out. So
you
like
imagine
I would no.
If that was Billie Joe Armstrong.
I'm 37 and a half years old. My stomach dropped when I read that today.
That's incredible. It would have been
and I can see you can
see
him?
It, can't you? I totally can see it.
Absolutely. He would have been great.
He would have been great.
And he's not a scumbag like Coyote Shivers.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that to me was like, oh shit. That's a missed opportunity.
Yeah, that he wasn't in it is because of his touring schedule. His touring schedule.
Because he was a successful musician.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Sad.
Really sad for me.
Yeah. Angelina Jolie almost played Deb.
Yeah, apparently she was too good.
She like took over the vibe in the room. Like she was too big of a presence.
Yeah. I think Robin Tunney is great in this movie.
I do too. I think she's perfect.
And it was her idea to shave. This is something I knew previously. It was her idea for Deb to shave her head.
For real. Yeah.
Yeah, she does it for real. Yeah. And she has a perfect head. What if it had been real weird?
They wouldn't know until she did it.
Yeah. It's again, we know how important significant haircuts are to you and me.
I know.
And that's a big one. The song playing is perfect. The scene is perfect. It also leads to the line, it's one of them says like you shaved all your hair off, and she says it's still in the sink if you want. Oh, it's AJ. It's still in the sink if you want to glue it.
Yeah, that was a good line. Yeah, no, she looks great with a shaved head. I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse that there are no photos of me with the pixie cut that I got when I was 19, but there's no evidence of it ever having happened because I didn't. I was like, I had just been dumped, and I cut off all my hair and avoided cameras.
But didn't you had the presence of mind to not take all of it off, though, because you don't know. That is something you can't take back if you got a real weird head.
I know. I do have a flat spot in the back of my head. I didn't have the guts to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, to me, that's like,
yeah, you really gotta.
Yeah, that's a big decision.
That's like, if I'm as cool as I am because of Green Day and you're as cool as you are because of Bad Religion, there's a level above it.
Yeah.
And whoever that person is, whoever they're
shaving.
listening to, they can shave their heads.
Yeah. I was not there.
It also allows for another one of my it's a tiny little moment. I love it so much.
I know exactly what you're going to say, I think.
It's when, wow, now I'm thinking, well, hold on, because it's such a weird, tiny detail. Mm-hmm. It's when AJ's giving Deb a really hard time and trying to get her to talk about what happened. Mm-hmm. And Lucas walks up and is like, Deb's fine. She's perfect. And he touches the top of her head and you hear it.
Yep. I wrote it down.
Because they had to mic that. That didn't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like that's Foley after or something.
The way that he touched her head was so specific and so perfect in that moment.
Yeah. He just like it's such a, like, you can tell these people all really care about each other in this movie. And it's such a sweet, like, and you hear the way her little peach fuzz, like, on the top of her head, it scritches against his fingers. It's so satisfying.
Yeah.
I love that moment.
I wrote the head touch, LOL.
It's so good.
I noted it. I sure did.
That's so funny.
I sure did.
It also gives us, well, Sinead Rebellion, shock me with that deviant behavior.
Yeah. I felt like a lot of the lines in this had this sort of over-the-top character that, like, Kevin Smith's movies have, where, like, we've talked forever about how there's things in teenagers saying things in these movies that teenagers wouldn't necessarily say. They're, like, pushed to a new level.
Right.
But there's a version of that is specifically 90s Kevin Smith type dialogue.
Yes.
That I feel like also exists in this movie. Like, those lines feel very much like some of the lines I always quoted from Clerks or Chasing Amy. Like, it had that same sort of cadence to it, or like way of playing with language.
People, I like read a few reviews that tried to say this movie was trying to be like younger Reality Bites. And it's that weird Gen X thing that they're wrong about. It's not that. This movie feels so much more like teen Clerks.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree with you on that.
It's a cleaner, more wholesome teen Clerks.
In color.
In color.
Yeah. Slightly better acting. No offense to Clerks, but we all know. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's why, like, I fully enjoyed myself watching this movie. Like, I didn't know how I was going to feel about it, but it was like, I just kind of got it. Like, I was like, oh, yes, I get this. I get why Andrea's in love with it. I get the time period. I get what they're trying to do. I have no real problems with this movie. Like, for the time that it was out, like, there's some weird stuff with Ethan Embry's character trying to kiss someone with her eyes closed. Like, stuff that at the time, again, we wouldn't have noticed. But now you're like, ugh. You know,
so
but those are small things.
Max Caulfield's daughter, by the way.
Yeah, I read that too.
Today. And I think that's one of the reasons this movie holds up so well to me, is that for everything people seem to not like about it, is stuff that they were projecting on it in the first place. Like, this movie just still feels really good to watch because I don't feel like it's trying to, like, this. I hope people can tell how much I love this movie at this point, that I don't mean it as an insult.
I think
to say that it's not trying to, like, wrestle with anything. And I think that's totally fine.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, you can't fault this movie for not doing something it wasn't trying to do.
Right. Yeah. I think because of the time period, because of the ensemble cast, because of the age of the people in it, the setting, all of that, there's all these ways that people want to fit it into the mold of the stuff that came before it. Mm-hmm. But it's more of the moment than that. I don't think it's looking back. I think it's like, this is actually now.
Right.
You know, like, Clerks came out in what, 94?
94.
And so it is, to me, of that time period.
Mm-hmm.
in a way. Like, it feels much more like Clerks than it ever will like any of the Gen X movies that I loved. And like, I didn't go in thinking this was going to be a Gen X movie because I remember that I didn't watch it because it was 95. I am Gen X. I mean, I'm young Gen X, but like, I am Gen X. And if I didn't see it, there's a reason at the time. So I wasn't expecting it to be a Reality Bites or Pump Up the Volume type clone.
Mm-hmm. It is so much more. It is like on a spectrum. Not spectrum's not the right word. It's like a sort of Venn diagram or something of like Clerks and Clueless. It's like those two movies. It's way more involved in those, which again, not two movies you would ever compare, obviously. But like the DNA in this movie has way more in common with those two than anything you've brought to the show or wanted to talk about.
100%. 100%. And I understood like the love for this movie. Mm-hmm. I was afraid I wasn't gonna like.
I wasn't until I started reading reviews, and I was like, "Oh God, this movie isn't just universally beloved like I had thought."
No.
Oh no,
it has terrible reviews on Rotten Tomatoes.
It's got like a 30%.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad.
I think that's crazy.
I know.
Also, apparently, I have the reverse experience of the cast, who only in the last few years learned what a cult classic this movie is.
Yeah, exactly. I was a little bit disappointed in the representation of AJ as an artist, only because he's kind of lame. And he's not a very good artist.
Why is that something that we've encountered? Because it's also, what's his face in Some Kind of Wonderful isn't all that impressive. And we're supposed to think they're great.
I love, though, that at the very end, he decides he's going to go to art school in Boston.
So he can be near Corey. What art school in Boston would that be?
So he either went to SMFA or Mass Art.
Uh-huh.
He could have gone to Leslie. I don't know. Probably. I'm going to say Mass Art if he was able to get into any of them. That's the one.
Based on what you can extrapolate about what his portfolio would have looked like from the...
And SMFA was like sort of the weird, like actual counterculture, like Nan Golden, sort of just really run by a bunch of crazy people. Like, I think he would have fit in more at a place like Mass Art.
With the gluing the quarters down, I wonder how you submit that. I guess a photograph.
You would have to document it, and maybe a little blurb about the meaning behind the piece.
And it just says, I don't feel that I need to explain my art to you.
Yeah, that won't fly in art school, though. They make you explain it.
I had a friend who went to RISD, and I won't tell on here any of her art, like, projects that she submitted there, but some of them are so weird.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, absolutely. Like, that's part of the deal. And actually, I think that's why I said he probably would have gone to Mass Art, because he's pretty conventional. Mm-hmm. Like, he was just drawing pictures of the girl he had a crush on. Like, he was not doing any weird high concept, like...
What art school did fucking Adam Martin go to? Did he go to art school? I can't remember if they actually talk about that or not.
He went to, I want to say, NYU.
Now that you say that, I feel like that is something they mentioned.
Yeah. Huh? Yeah, I think he went to NYU, or supposedly went to NYU.
Yeah.
Which has a really good art school for an MFA program, at least.
He also submitted 50 pictures of one person that he was drawing, because that's his whole thing, too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of sort of, like, classic, stereotypical, like, 90s male behavior in this movie featured, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, the nice guy best friend and, like... you know, all that.
It is, they do, again, I already said this a little bit, but they do such a good job, like I said, of it actually feeling like a day in the life of people who've been spending a lot of time together for a long time. It is kind of cute when he does finally, it's not cute when he does it because he picks a terrible time because Corey is visibly crying.
Yeah.
But when he says, like, you remember when we had that awful day and you were wearing that skirt with the flowers, where it's just like, oh, that's like a nice little detail that they included for, she's like, you hate that skirt?
Yeah.
You can tell that that's a skirt she probably wears a lot because she really likes it.
Yeah.
And you get all of that just in that little exchange there.
Yeah.
I think this movie, it's funny because for all of my saying, like, I just don't think it's trying to do more than whatever. It is also kind of thoughtful in a weird way with that kind of stuff. Like, because there's so much of this movie that makes it as such a delight for me is in those little moments of dialogue that show how close all of these people are. And it didn't need to do that, though probably it wouldn't be one of my favorite movies if it weren't so successful.
Well, and like all the moments where they're like
relationships,
choosing music for the store and vetoing each other and stuff. And
they have their little M&M game.
Yeah. And Deb with the pin machine.
I love
making pins for everybody. I just wrote in all caps, I want a pin machine. I've always wanted a pin machine and I've never had one.
No. And it's the coolest thing.
It is.
It just is the coolest thing.
It absolutely is. You
can find people sell those packs. You can get like on Etsy right now very easily. All of the Mark Sucks and all of the.
I'm not surprised by that.
Pins that she. There's also just a little shout out. There is a store in Philly on South Street called South Street Art Mart, and it rules. And they carry all kinds of just. It's like a lot of local artists and stuff carry their stuff there. And they coordinate a Rex Manning Day on South Street every year. It has like a bunch of events and merch specific for it, but then also they partner with like other stores in the area and do a whole thing together. It's very fun. Every April 8th.
Yeah, Rex Manning Day. Also, which I didn't realize until I read some more about this movie, is the day they found Kurt Cobain.
Yeah.
Which was like a somewhat intentional, like behind the scenes gesture about like the death of rock and roll.
Yeah.
By the writer.
It is. And it's also, it's sort of darkly funny that the death of rock and roll is the day that Rex Manning is being, but it's also only, apparently they were filming.
Yeah.
When I didn't realize in my head how, like, Kurt Cobain's death feels so, like, in the past to me. I always think that I was younger than I was when he died. So the fact that that's so concurrent with this movie.
Yeah. And in fact, I was like a Nirvana obsessed teenager when he died.
Right. And I'll bet if this movie had come out a year or two later, a bigger deal, like that would have been a whole thing in this.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah.
In this movie. So I'm kind of glad it didn't, because I could see that being like, again, this movie that's not very serious.
Right. Trying to take on something like that. Yeah. I think that would have sort of ruined the sort of vibe of the movie. That end scene was really fun. I'm bummed about like the party scene at the end. Like I'm super bummed that Coyote Shivers is like a terrible person, because I really, that little,
that song rules.
That song rules, and sort of like just watching Renee Zellweger get up there and sing it was awesome. And I did see that scene.
You had
somewhere.
Seen that.
I had seen that scene, probably on a preview or something. Yeah.
She does a really good job of looking anxious and being excited. The way she's like flapping her hands.
I love her flapping. Her flailing
it's really
on the stage
endearing.
is really sweet. Yeah. It's really great. So we have our obvious Jersey connection, right? This took place in Delaware, which is
who says? I know they say it takes place in Delaware.
Yeah, the people that wrote the movie.
But this is a Jersey movie.
Yeah.
It's a Jersey movie. Nobody mentions Delaware at any point in this movie.
You would never know that this wasn't in Jersey.
It was filmed in North Carolina. So it's not even like, well, yeah, but it was filmed on location in Delaware. No. The only on location in this movie is, well, it's not. They're not on location in Atlantic City. But, because they don't actually go there to film it. Like, it's not. So I'm lying. The only place you can place is Atlantic City.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't care. It's not. It's also, what's funny is Hiding Out is also a movie where I don't know why they keep wanting to send people to Delaware. In these movies.
Yeah, it's weird.
I don't understand why it's not just Jersey. It's a Jersey. It feels like a Jersey movie. This like band of misfits, like you said. Like,
it definitely feels like a Jersey movie. Couple things about the people in
But do you have a less obvious Jersey connection? Sorry.
Oh, I did. And that's actually, so that came from when I was looking up the people in this movie and like what they've done since. So Anthony LaPaglia, who plays Joe.
You
know what I'm going to say? What's that?
Was it a So I Married an Axe Murderer?
No, not that.
Because that has the giant. Where can I find a giant poster of Atlantic City?
Yeah. No, there's another one. He was allegedly, the original choice to play Tony Soprano on The Sopranos, but turned the role down. It would have been a very different Tony Soprano.
Yeah. But I think I love Joe.
Yeah. I also, somebody calls someone Buckethead in this movie, and I feel like, so my friend Andy, who I saw when I was in Jersey, he had a friend who everyone called Buckethead. And I don't know if that came from this movie, but it might have.
I wonder.
Yeah. We
Joe,
should call more people
categorically
Buckethead.
Say that you are not the bigger banana head.
Yes.
Also banana head. A lot of weird. But it's because of the PG-13 rating.
Right.
It's Joe who calls, I think he calls Lucas Buckethead. Joe is not the kind of guy who's using words like banana head and buckethead.
No.
But again, it's lines that I end up really loving because they're so silly and fun, and it's because of this PG-13 rating.
Right.
Another reason this movie feels more Jersey than Delaware to me is he's got Warren has the silliest accent, but it's not a Jersey accent. It's Brendan Sexton, who plays Warren, is from Staten Island, I think, which is
But that character,
he's a little Jersey rat.
He's such a Jersey rat. Oh my god!
How many Warrens did you go to school with?
Oh, so
all
many.
Of them?
Yes,
all of them.
Yes. Yeah, there was Jared, there was Tim,
14.
there was Scott. But, like, I could name the other Warrens.
2
that
Steves.
I knew. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, apparently the actor Brendan Sexton is only 14 when they're filming this, and
he looks it.
He looks it and feels it. He's such a little shithead. I love him.
I fully hated him because he plays a shithead so well. I was like, this kid sucks.
Well, he's also he's one of the awful bullies in Welcome to the Dollhouse too.
Ooh.
So he is. Yeah.
Well, and he's essentially, he shows up with a gun later on. Like, he's not a good guy.
Well, he's a kid, you know.
That don't make him a bad guy.
He wants to work at a record store.
Yeah. It's got a funny way of going about it.
Joe's not going to give me a job. Why would anyone give me a job?
I mean, he's got a point.
Me a job.
He has a point.
Lucas steals $9,000 from you and you don't do dick to him?
So I have one other what if for this movie. And it's not about people that were supposed to be in it. But there was a moment where Deb and Corey are in the bathroom after Corey freaks out. And first of all, there's a special level of friendship where you will pee in front of someone.
That's what I mean.
Only had that with 2 people in my life where I would actually pee in front of them.
I don't think I've ever peed in front of anybody.
I have had 2 of those friendships. But that's actually not my point. I loved that moment. But there was a moment there where I was like, what if Corey and Deb were queer?
Yeah.
They had a moment.
They do.
It's
very
like a
sweet.
moment.
Not just the peeing, but like the way she like holds her hair back when she's like dunks her face in the water, in the way that she kind of, it's so funny because again, this is another great example of like, this is a group of people who spend so much time together that like, because Deb comes in and is an asshole in the beginning, and Corey says hi to her, and she just gives her the finger, and she says like, why does she hate me so much? And it's like, well, she does, interesting.
Yeah,
she obviously doesn't, because you don't have that scene where Corey feels comfortable peeing in front of her, where Deb feels comfortable peeing in front of her. Although I do think part of that is we're supposed to like get a little more about Deb, what a like, different, independent, whatever.
But that paired with her like kind of like,
caring,
mopping
for
off her face after she
and
sticks her face in
joking
the
with
sink.
her, and she makes her laugh, and it's like,
there's like a tenderness there that kind of is unexpected that I actually felt was almost more authentic than any of her conversations with AJ.
Yeah. Totally. I could see that.
And maybe I'm just putting subtext that I want on this movie, but
it does explain the like her being kind of shitty to her until.
Yeah.
And then, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm never going to push back against your reading of anything, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is there, as is the case with so many of the movies we've watched, the biggest issue with this movie is obviously the lack of diversity across just about every category.
Yep.
Yep. These are just some nice straight white people, attractive straight white people. So that is a knock against it for sure. But there are some straight white people that I have real fondness for in my heart.
Some of them are okay.
Robin Tunney, because of shaving her head. I don't know if it's Tooney or Tunney. It should be Tunney because it's two N's, but I feel like I hear people say Tooney.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's Tunney, correct. Though, right?
That's
Tunney.
How I would pronounce it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's wearing a wig in The Craft because she had shaved her head for this movie. The Craft, again, what am I supposed to do about the fact, Jodie, that Empire Records, The Craft, and That Thing You Do all came out within like a year of each other?
Yeah.
That's all you need to know.
Significant time frame.
That's all you need to know.
It's a significant time frame.
Another little fun fact that if you are obsessed with this movie like I am, you already know. But if this is your first time watching it, so again, Can't Hardly Wait comes out like 2 or 3 years after this. I think it's 98.
Mm-hmm.
It's an Ethan Embry movie.
Yeah.
That movie, one of the major plot points hinges on a letter that Ethan's character, that Preston writes to Amanda, his longtime high school crush, of this letter accidentally making its way to her. And it happens, I promise this is going to connect back.
I believe
it. It happens because it gets stuck to the foot of a character. You only see her feet. It gets stuck to like some gum on her shoe and gets carried into a party that they're all at. And there are 2 characters. You only see their feet. And those characters apparently are played by Liv Tyler and Johnny Whitworth, who is AJ.
Huh.
So I like to imagine that Can't Hardly Wait and Empire Records exist in the same universe.
The same universe?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I could see that.
And that Mark, I guess that part doesn't make sense because he's still playing a high school person 3 years later. But
right. Yeah. Well, maybe he got laid back. He's not the smartest. Laid back? No. Left back. Maybe he got left back.
He's a little too laid back.
Yeah.
And that led to him being left back.
Right, because he's not very smart.
Yeah, no. He's not even sure how his name is spelled. He has to double check when they say, is the band going to be with the C or with the K? He checks his name tag.
He does check his name tag.
I love him so much.
He is enjoyable. Yeah. Very, very dumb. But also in a very fun way.
So baked.
Yeah, he's high the whole time. Clearly.
Yeah.
So, like every other movie we've done recently, this was being developed for Broadway.
It's a weird one.
I know. But it's music based, and I feel like that's always sort of a...
And I guess the cult status of it makes them feel like it's...
Yeah. Yeah, they were eyeing a 2020.
I'll go see it.
Yeah, they were trying to open it in 2020, and then the pandemic killed it. But there was a reading in 2022. So, and the book is by the writer of the film.
I like that.
So, yeah, we shall see. We may have to do a musicals run
where we see this,
and
we becomes her.
Yep, and pump up the volume.
That's so.
And
funny.
Check out Heathers. I never saw the Heathers musical. Yeah. Oh, so I like that sometimes we give recommendations about what we've been watching. I know that like there's a strike going on and people can't really promote their own stuff. And I don't know if this is a good or a bad thing to kind of do, but I am fully obsessed with the final season of Reservation Dogs. It does something to me in the way that it jumps from episode to episode in sort of a non-linear but also linear way. It's just so incredible. It feels like looking at like a real individual artist's view of the world. And I love it so much. I'm really sad it's ending. If you have not watched Reservation Dogs, please watch it. It's so good. It's so good. I laugh, I cry, I love it. It's the best.
It's on my list. For somebody who co-hosts a podcast, it's all about watching movies and TV. And I think people can tell I really love movies and TV. It's not that. It's very hard for me to start something new.
Yeah.
But that's been on my list and you have convinced me
It's
to bump
great.
it to
It's
the top
great.
of
It
that
took
list.
me a few episodes to get into it because it's such a unique voice that is unfamiliar from what you're used to seeing on like episodic television.
Right.
But once you kind of settle into it and realize that you're just along for like the most amazing ride, it's so good.
I'm really looking forward to it. I have not heard one bad thing
Oh, it's incredible
about it. So
yeah.
yeah.
And it's also like digestible sized episodes for the most part. I think they're sort of variable lengths, but they're not like hour-long drama.
I'm trying to think if I've got anything. I guess watch Dinosaurs.
Okay. Oh,
I guess you could also check out this Monday's episode of New Jersey is the World for a familiar voice.
All right. Well, next week.
Oh, yeah.
Let's talk about
what
next
are we
week.
watching?
So next week we're doing something a little different. We mentioned this last week, but we are going to complete our Alan Moyle trilogy. We watched Pump Up the Volume. We just watched Empire Records. And now we're going to, like I said, do something a little different. We're going to watch his first feature film from 1980 called Times Square that neither of us has seen. But we decided we wanted to be a little bit completist about the Alan Moyle universe. Hey guys, quick note from the future here. We did watch Times Square, and interesting movie. We'll talk about it next week, but just a quick note about mid-movie, there's an extremely racist song that is performed by our two leads, and it's just good to know about ahead of time, because it kind of took us out of the movie for a minute. Other than that, I think it's still worth talking about this movie, but just a heads up, that's coming. And it also has an amazing early 80s soundtrack. It also has some queer themes that were sort of like quashed or reduced by the studios. It's got a lot of similarities to stuff we've watched, but it's earlier and seemingly a bit grittier. It's also New York City in the early 80s, which for me, I'm like super excited to see again, because I grew up like going to the city when it was, you know, a little rougher than it is now. So yeah, we're gonna take on something that neither of us have seen, and then I think we'll probably go back to our back and forth for a bit. But yeah. So Times Square, it is available online in a lot of places. I think for the most part, it is that like a $3.99 situation again, which I apologize for.
But I did find it, and I'll drop the link in.
Oh, great.
Internet Archive has it up.
Oh, right. Perfect.
So.
Yeah.
Which is how I watched Pump Up the Volume, and it was totally fine.
Same. Yeah. So Tim Curry is in it.
Oh, that's
as a radio
exciting.
DJ.
Oh, fun.
And it has a little bit of a psych hospital side, like, you know, setting.
Okay.
So, yeah, there's lots of stuff that I think relates to other things we've discussed.
I'm really looking forward to it.
I am too. It does not get great reviews. And
well, apparently neither does Empire Records,
right.
So what do I know?
Right. And, you know, the film was kind of taken away from Alan Moyle and finished by other people, so it's not his original plan. But I'm still interested. I'm still curious. It's like a little time capsule.
Yeah, I think it'll be fun to see what precedes.
Yeah.
I think either works. No, preempt is not right.
No, precedes
your favorite movie. And did you say, I know you said Pump Up the Volume is like the most important or like foundational for you. Is it your favorite movie?
Again, I feel like I have to go back to what you said, where it's like, it depends on what you mean by that question.
Mm-hmm.
Like, in a lot of ways, the answer is yes. There are probably other movies that I have other types of sentimental attachments to.
Right. Like Some Kind of Wonderful?
Yeah, but I feel like that's definitely down the list. I think, like Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, I will sob. And I watched it every year. Maybe
we're just going to watch it in December because
I think we have to watch it in December.
We can do whatever
I do it every year.
Mm-hmm.
I do it every year. I mean, I watched it every year since it first came out with my mom growing up. It is, you know, so there's movies like that,
right,
that like fully live in my heart. But I think that in terms of like a If we're putting it in the time frame of the like general teens to 20s period, absolutely Pump Up the Volume is my favorite. But
and that's how I feel about it. I mean, I think Empire Records is my favorite movie.
Yeah.
I
kind of want to reject the frame anyway of a favorite anything, because it's like, how?
Yeah, I have a really hard time not wanting to organize everything in lists.
Yeah.
And
I get that.
It's, yeah. So, but I think that it is really significant for both of us that that it happens to be the same director.
Yeah.
Dealing with, and that there's a movie neither of us have
I mean, we couldn't. We couldn't skip it.
But we're so primed to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm really excited.
I mean, from the Wikipedia summary, the last sentence of the little blurb is: the plot embodies a punk rock aesthetic of misunderstood youth articulating their frustrations toward adult authority through music. Which is your favorite.
I can't wait.
The sentence is just too perfect. So next week we will be watching Times Square. Please check it out. Let us know what you think. And yeah, you can find us on Instagram and other places at WatchersPodNJ. You can find me on Instagram at Jodie_Mim, JODIE_MIM. I'm not going to put my own art down again today. Go ahead. You can talk about your...
Good. I'm glad. Good. I'm at AQ Andrea Q on Twitter. And that's where we are. And that's where you can find us. And we will...
And you can email us.
Oh, yeah. I always forget that part. You can email us at watcherspodnj@gmail.com.
Yep.
And that's all the places. All right, everybody. We love you.
We'll see you next week.
Goodbye.
Bye. I don't feel the need to explain my art to you, Warren.